So, welcome everyone. I really appreciate our panelists volunteering their time and just being willing to participate in our little con here today. I promised hundreds of people in attendance and millions of dollars in revenue due to your participation in the panel. But no, this is something new, brand new for us. So I've been completely honest, tried to be, and not promised much at all, but they were still willing to participate. So I really appreciate you guys doing that. For those in attendance at the end, if we have time, then I do want to take some questions from the audience. If y'all have questions to ask of the panelists, you can post those in the podcast and uh, panels channel, and then I'll kind of at the end, again, if we have time, I'll go through those, and you can. I'll read the question. You could, step up to the mic and just ask it in Discord if you want, or if you'd rather me just ask it for you, then I'll be willing to do that. Just indicate that in your question, and I'll do that. So, um, all right. So let's just start with some introductions. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, how you're involved in the board gaming hobby, and I'll start with Joe.
Yeah, my name's Joe Ellis, and I live in Ohio in the United States. I've been involved with Plaid Hat Games since 2012, started doing their website and have worked for them, and then for Asmodee, and then when we went independent, back for Plaid Hat. And my job title is actually CTO, so I do a lot of coding, and I mean, we've a small staff, so it's not like I've got a bunch of people under me or something. No one under me, but I do all the technical stuff. But I also have designed some games over the years, Raxon, and co-designer of Crystal Clans and Forgotten Waters, which is what we kind of relaunched the company with this year.
Great. All right, Dustin, how about you?
Yeah. First off, thank you guys, AIECon, for putting this on. I'm always, like I said, I'm always excited and down to talk about board games. I am the owner and director at Board Game with Education. We started as a podcast 3 years ago in Taiwan. We were originally Board Game with English, and we were using board games to help language learners. But now we are branched into different content areas, just education and board games for learning in general. We develop resources for homeschoolers, educators, so they can look at how to use mass market hobby board games as a part of their instruction.
Great. All right, David.
Hey everyone, I'm the designer of the Nightfall deck building game. Originally from Ohio, currently in North Carolina. I'm still developing games in my spare time, but full time I work IT. Big family person over here. We're a foster home and adoptive, so we're constantly having kids in and out. And we found board games a much better tool than your everyday video game for that face-to-face interaction. Education, as already mentioned here, and it's just been a fantastic hobby to be in.
For sure. Yeah. Well, these guys all have spoken to stuff that's personal to me. I'm a huge Plaid Hat Games fan. Nightfall is one of my favorite games ever, and then we homeschool our kids. So I was telling Bella that I'll probably be starting to listen to that podcast. So I bet we'll be able to find some use for it myself. So this is right up my alley. So, all right. Well, I know probably y'all have not heard about a little illness that's been going around called COVID, but it's had a small impact on our world, and so I'm just going to start out with that. How have you guys seen that impact you or your organization? And then also, how do you think that's impacted the hobby as a whole? Dustin, why don't you start us out?
Yeah, sure. I guess my answer might be a little unique since really more also the hobby and then also teachers. So we we had Roger, who is my business partner. You're familiar with, or Roger. We had decided to do this, I think, for the pandemic, or maybe like while it was kind of happening, and we weren't really sure where it was going. And then we really went gung ho about it during the pandemic, but we knew we couldn't really look at schools for opportunities to get them set up with board games in their classroom. So we had to um, approach it from a different angle, and we kind of looked at designing whether we could design resources for remote learning. And we do have a couple games that can be used remotely, and looking at those games like code names and a lot of actually a lot of board game companies have looked at ways to digital resources too to grow the hobby. So we just kind of looked at it that way, and then we also looked at more what games can we still develop resources for because of the homeschool communities looking for these types of resources as well. Um, and then also just looking at games like I think, David had mentioned that are great just for face to face interaction for family time during a pandemic.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's one reason, not just education, but, as David kind of mentioned, for families in general, board games are great for, maybe getting away from the screen for a little bit. You know, I like TV and movies and that kind of stuff too, but, sometimes it's good to get together with the family and run through an escape room or something like that. So, uh, all right, David, what's the impact have you seen from COVID?
Yeah, the couple aspects there with as far as like local game groups go. I was in a couple. I was in a board game group at a local store and also had a D&D group going, and both of those fell apart. Can't meet together. Um, on the upside, my daughter got married, so I've recruited my son-in-law, and he is now my primary board gamer. And thankfully, he likes the heavy stuff too, so that's been a lot of fun. So pretty much right now, my gaming group is 100% family. I'm not complaining; it's still good times. On the developing side, I can't really attend conventions in person, so it's hard to show my designs and get any play tests. Then we had a local group of game designers, and we would meet together monthly to test each other's designs. And that feedback is just amazing from fellow designers. And that's not been able to happen this whole year. So definitely lacking on the play test feedback with this whole pandemic situation for sure.
Yeah, that makes it rough. Joe, I know you guys have developed some digital tools for your play testing and stuff. Not to steal any thunder here, but I'm leading into you. So, what impact have you guys seen?
Yeah, it's crazy because we had all this excitement of relaunching the company, and it's actually hard to even remember the exact timing as an independent company, and I can't even remember if Forgotten Waters was announced before or after the lockdown started, but it was all happening, and I just remember feeling like, I mean, it was scary because it's like, can we have this game that succeed? It's kind of, I mean, part of the idea was it'd be great for high player counts, which not a lot of pirate games are. But I just remember thinking, no matter what, whether it's successful or not, we work in games. It's our the only way we can contribute is to help people just have fun at home and not need to, go out and make connections. So yeah, so we did a big online system for testing Summoner Wars, and there's a lot of Summoner Wars players play on Vassal and that old tool and things like that. So in some ways, it was just useful for us. We could deploy cards and stuff right away on this web app I made that it's kind of like Vassal. But the big thing was then we made this Forgotten Waters remote app, and I don't know what would have happened without that. I had also luckily designed solo and 2-player version of the game. And I think a lot of people have played that version. And somehow we've kind of waited through this period. I know I personally have been playing on TTS it's funny, with basically my local game group, of course, you could play with anyone in the world, but you just have those social connections that you're used to. And, and we know we all like the same games and stuff. But I feel like our momentum for Forgotten Waters and such was slowed. I think, I think there are probably, if you had a big Kickstarter this year, it's probably not so bad because people buy it thinking towards 2021 and getting excited. But I think our momentum was slowed, but it's been a very successful game, and I think it'll hopefully have a longer tail, but we don't know the future. I think the important thing is I'm proud of the work we've done, kind of providing digital tools and solo modes and things like that. I'm amazed at, how the solo game community has grown in the past couple of years, really, or last 5 years or so. And it's really it's kind of a good thing in a certain sense because people had the tools, and probably a lot of people learned this year about solo gaming and how to do that stuff. So we've got that for quite a few of our games, those modes. And yeah, it's important.
Yeah. How about David, maybe you can speak to this. I don't know. But as far as the teamwork aspect, it's not just one guy that makes a game, right? It's you've got artists and that kind of multiple cogs that are having to turn here. How's maybe the team relationships been affected?
So far, all of my designs have basically been myself working solo on the mechanics, and then working with the publisher to get the art and other things nailed down, which that was online prior. I never did work like face to face with publishers. It was always across the internet. So that aspect hasn't been affected on my end.
Right. What kind of tools do you use, like Zoom meetings and that kind of stuff, to accomplish those?
Yeah, basically the same kind of stuff you would today. Yep, for general stuff.
There really is something missing from the in-person playtesting, though, like you had referenced, because you could make a tabletop simulator module. I should spell that out for people who don't know, for a game, but that in person, especially when you're first working on a game, it is, you kind of get on the table and start playing, and sometimes you need to make some adjustments, like instantaneously pull out a pen, scribble some things. And reciprocity too, of like I think was mentioned earlier, playing each other's designs and stuff. It's harder to do, and that in-person interaction is just kind of, in an abstract sense, it's like board games are kind of a lot of work, but that in-person aspect and social engagement is kind of the oil that kind of makes it all work together and makes it all fun, right? And losing some of that is tough, especially when playtesting, which is a lot more, sometimes less fun than regular gaming.
I know, talking about losing that face to face, I've suffered the same thing with our board games. We used to I used to be in a couple of different board game groups, and both of those have kind of fallen apart. I know some are playing online, but it's just not the same, right? And but we can still have fun. And quick plug, we're going to have some more fun tonight, 7:00. I still have about 2 slots open for a game of Forgotten Waters. If anybody wants to join, you can hit the board game sign up channel. But all right, I'm done with my plug. So I wanted to start with the COVID topic because I felt like as I was looking at kind of my list of questions, I was like, everything's different, right? I felt like every answer was going to be predicated, well, was used to, we did it this way, and now we do it this. And so I kind of want to get that one out of the way a little bit. But just what's your view of just the state of the industry in general, or the hobby? I kind of don't like calling it an industry, but whatever. The state of the hobby in general, maybe even pre-COVID, seemed like a couple years ago, man, I mean, it was just uh, skyrocketing, right? And the cons were record numbers and all this stuff, attendance in the cons and everything. Was even pre-COVID, was that starting to wane a little bit, do you think? Or, was it still on its trajectory? Uh, uh, and then kind of, obviously COVID's kind of impacted that probably negatively, is what I would guess. But anyway, just going to leave that to you guys. Dustin, what's your feel on that?
Yeah, it'll be hard for me to answer it from my perspective as Board Game with Education, since we literally launched our store in November. So it's still kind of new, but I've always like kind of held my ear to the ground when it comes to board game hobby since, I guess, maybe about 4 years ago. Um, but I would say I was listening, and I mentioned this in our email when we were chatting. I was listening to Ludology podcast, and I kind of noticed that this holiday season is a lot of like evergreen titles that are super popular for board game companies. People seem to be going back to those more so than ever. And I think Steve Bonacore, he was the owner of Stronghold Games.
Yeah,
He
he's
mentioned
retired
how
now, I think.
yeah, and he mentioned how they sold a lot of their Terraforming Mars game this year more so than they have in the past, and that he mentioned maybe because of the fact that people aren't playing new games at convention, and maybe you're chatting with friends online and you're kind of sharing some games that you've really enjoyed. And we've noticed a few games, Hanabi, for some reason this
Huh.
year we sold a bunch of copies of Hanabi. I think it's just a great like, game for maybe at home with circle, whoever you're quarantining with. Everybody knows it's a cooperative game. It's enjoyable, so it's kind of one of those evergreen titles that we noticed we sold a lot of. But again, we're very new, so we're still kind of learning um,
Right.
what's selling and what people enjoy and where the hobby's kind of going.
Cool. Joe, how about you?
I think that I think the hobby is still growing. I don't know, numbers wise this year, and who knows what kind of state we'll be in next year. Hopefully, better than now, but I don't know if it'll look like a year ago. But I think people struggle in board games not because it's going to stop growing anytime soon, but just because, yeah, I mean, actually, as was just mentioned, like the industry's kind of maturing. So to have a big hit,
Hmm.
the rewards are greater than ever, but that's harder to do than ever. So if your job, like mine is making games, that's kind of scary. But I don't think that gamers or independent creators um, have any, I think the fields are all green before them because it's all about setting the goal when you're working on games and want to publish a game. And if I was working just a regular programming job like it was a few years ago and wanted to make a game, it's like, okay, I'll make a game about Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr dueling, and I'll get it on Kickstarter, and I'll get, if I get 500 backers who, get it to the people who want to play it, and that's going to be a huge success, right? And it's not going to make me $1 million. But I think the opportunity for that kind of stuff is better than ever. And that's the kind of stuff that excites me and stuff I consider backing on Kickstarter and things. Um, if your goal is to, yeah, like if you got to make your salary and stuff like that, it's those evergreen titles, and there's a lot of choice in the industry, so it can be difficult to get a message out. But I think that is those are challenges that come with growth. I mean, it's not things aren't totally overloaded, and I think we're just a maturing industry. I think that I don't even know, how the numbers look overall. I've heard the same things. It's evergreen titles a little bit more this year. Like early in COVID, there was Amazon had a huge surge in board game sales, but it's like, it was pandemic and oddly. And I will say my little game, Raxon, I kind of felt like it got a little mini version of the bump Pandemic got early on in the pandemic. I mean, it's tiny, it's a little, under 10,000 print run game, but I noticed it popping up a lot more on Instagram and stuff. And I have no idea. That's not how I was driven. I was not driven to like play with the ideas of, because that's a game about, a zombie outbreak that's like in process. And I am not driven to those kinds of stories in the past year. I am driven to, fantasy and escapism, not like, let's focus on this more. So Pandemic, became the #1 played game ever on Board Game Geek this year. And it had huge sales. And I just find that's quite a phenomenon. I don't know what to think about it.
Yeah. That's kind of like people playing Plague Inc. or something, So
there were a lot of articles written just in a lot of like mainstream media too. I think that probably helped a lot too.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. Of people kind of looking for direction and like someone who's been thinking about it. I know Matt Leacock has said it was the designer has said that's been pretty surreal.
David?
Speaking on Pandemic, we actually got Legacy Season 1 this past year, early in the winter. So we got to play through that storyline right along with COVID. That was fun. Pre-COVID, my area definitely was seeing the increase. I know the convention hotels were selling out earlier and earlier. Post-COVID, don't know much on the publishing side. I know I'm having a harder time getting a hold of publishers to speak to them, whether it's less staff in office or just the boom has hit them so where they can't take many cold calls or whatever, and they can't have a convention to speak face-to-face. But I'm definitely seeing a lot more activity on the playtesting side. Some of the forums I watch and frequent, I'm just a ton of new work in progress titles every day come through. And so it's cool to see that people, like, if they're stuck at home, let's make a game. That seems to be the trend. So it's just fun to watch that take place.
Cool.
So, yeah, if you're able to put forth the effort, it's like you talk to somebody like, well, what night are you free? Well, any night. Yeah. I mean, as long as you can do it online or whatever. That is helpful. I don't think that Gen Con and these large, I don't know if they'll ever be the same, even if I take the most, even if this thing is totally gone, right? If take a really optimistic view. But I think that, I mean, people are going to be driven to these smaller regional cons and the enjoyment of that, and putting away regular life for a few days, but just gaming with friends. And I think those are going to be bigger than ever after we get a chance. Who knows if the big retail, if Essen and Gen Con will ever be exactly the same, because Gen Con is kind of horrifying in some ways. You're packed. I mean, it can take 10 minutes to go from the booth to get a cup of coffee and just try to find your way back to the booth. And now when I think about that, it's like, seems so unsanitary. I don't know if we're creating germaphobes, or maybe we all should have been in the first place, or what. We'll see how we're all reacting, But it was a very, very, very crowded place.
Yeah. I think it's also created a space for these virtual cons, and kind of like what we're doing. But I know I've been to BGG Con down in Dallas before, and and this year BGG did their first virtual con, and they decided it was so well attended and that kind of thing. It's like, hey, we're gonna, even after pandemic, or after COVID's over, then we're going to keep doing a virtual con just because it's more accessible for people, that maybe can't afford or don't have, the time or whatever to make a special trip or whatever. So, so that's interesting.
Yeah, they've always done the streams from all the big cons, so they were a little bit ahead of the curve of people expecting that from them. But
Right.
but yeah, I mean, one of the advantages of cons is it just gives you an excuse to get away from regular life. So I think that's kind of the thing. Can you convince people to do that? Like you're going to be at home, but set aside everything else and just really, be all in for a weekend, and you could probably do pretty good. I know I've just started playing Twilight Imperium. I mean, it's my favorite game, but I hadn't played it online until just a couple months ago,
Mm.
and on Tabletop Simulator, and it's of course it's like a super long 8 hour game, and I think I've kind of felt that benefit. It's like you actually have to set aside the day and
Especially on that
not
game.
do anything else. Yeah, set aside all other possible distractions, and then you get that kind of benefit of what it's like to be at a con, and you forget about you shut the world out for a little bit. So highly recommend Twilight Imperium. It's not from Plaid Hat Games, but it has been a blast playing it these past couple months a few times.
My family enjoys Merchant of Venus, and that's a big long game that we set aside a big chunk of time for. But often I'll do that on a vacation or something, when I'm going to be home for the week or whatever.
Yeah, I think immersion, right? Immersion is more valuable during the pandemic, and just like being able to dive in and go somewhere else, right? If you can't, because you can't actually go anywhere. So an epic game really helps there.
Dustin, you have a favorite epic game?
Oh man. One game that we've been playing during the pandemic that works really well. I don't know if it's my favorite, but I really enjoyed it was King's Dilemma. Because it's one of those games that it's more played off the table than on the table. You definitely need a good group of players though, because we we got really involved in like our roles. In each game, we were a new generation from our house, so we had to introduce ourselves. And I created a PowerPoint after each session, like detailing the storyline of what happened, and like found weird pictures. Our king was the Burger King man at one point. He was our king in the game. So yeah, you kind of have to have a fun group that wants to kind of role play a little bit. And but the betting mechanic, I mean, it's something that people in our group enjoy too, is that intrigue and the negotiation and stuff. But yeah, that was a fun one this past year. It took like I think 6 months to finish. Uh, it's about 15K. So
David, how about you for a epic game? What's a fun epic game you enjoy, if any?
Yeah, this past November actually we found a really good deal on Gloomhaven, and me and the son-in-law have been playing through that one, having a blast. And then oddly enough, we found almost the entire Catan set, which we've not played Catan in years. Well, I had it years ago and since traded off, but now with the kids older in their adult years, we've reestablished it as a fun family game, and with everything mixed in, it's a couple hours long. I wouldn't know if I'd call that an epic storyline game necessarily, but it's just been fun to get all the adults to the table, cutting up, letting loose, and just haggling and having fun with it.
Yeah. I think I saw, did you have like a custom made board, or was that built into that's not a standard board, right?
No, actually,
seafarers or something?
Yeah, if you want to mix seafarers and the cities and knights together, if I recall correctly, there's not like an official way to do that. And someone on BGG had released a PDF on how they mixed it. But his layout didn't work with the modern cut on the ocean tiles. I was like, there's not enough ocean tiles in the modern version. So, and so, yeah, I'll do a lot of woodworking on the side for the home. And I just took some scrap and we whipped out a board to make it work. And so that's been a lot of fun, a lot of fun to play with.
Cool. That's another cool thing about the board gaming hobby is just, people, they come up with that stuff, they'll post it to BGG, here's an idea that I did, and sometimes they'll post, a PDF, or so you could print that out too, or, there's probably some 3D printing type, something where somebody could go print that model, So anyway, it's a very giving community. All right, so next question or a topic that I've got here, and a great follow up here is just if you guys have any tips on, say, somebody in the audience here has, hey, I want to start up a gaming group. So maybe just some tips in general for a gaming group face to face, but also maybe some tips for doing it online. So, how about Dustin? We start with Dustin.
Sure. Yeah. I guess so. One thing I mentioned, I lived in Taiwan for about 3 years, and we did a board game meetup at my friend's vegan restaurant and cafe, and we did it through language exchange. So they come play board game, practice their English. One thing that I would say that I learned from that, and then tried to do here, but again, the pandemic has shifted us away. So we moved back like shortly before the pandemic kind of hit. And we were starting to kind of grow a meetup here. But one tip I would give if anybody's looking to do that is be consistent. And then also, if you can rotate the quote unquote host role each time, because if you're the host, you have to be very comfortable not playing games, one, and also comfortable maybe not playing some games you would choose to play first. So you really want to make sure everybody's having a good time and they're finding people to play with. So you're kind of like that mingle person. But you don't want to do that every time, right? So if you do want to get together, maybe find someone willing to kind of take on that role every once in a while or switch off.
That's a good idea. I found myself, I know exactly what you're talking about in that host role,
Right.
So it's kind of like you're the greeter that welcomes everybody in. Hey, here's a table over here needing another Catan player or, whatever. And so there is some of that. So,
Yeah. When we were in Taiwan, we had I had like 3 or 4 of us that were hosts, but one was like the greeter, one was like, playing maybe social deduction game, 3 or 4 player games. One was if kids showed up, they were able to kind of put together a game for them. Um, but again, if you're just doing something for fun with, you want to just grow a group, you probably just need the person that's coordinating and mingling around.
right. That's a good idea.
Yeah,
David?
that
Oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I mean,
I was
I
gonna
want that to be kind of a free flowing thing, but
Yeah, I was gonna say I definitely. So I'm a pretty shy person until I get around board games, right? And then I become very outgoing. But it makes me. I agree with that tip about the host thing because it really kind of stresses me out. As soon as I get into like a large group board game thing when we've put it together, I am so concerned, is everyone else having fun and what can I do to make sure? And sometimes you gotta have some insight and you gotta think about this person just walked in, they're not sure. Okay, it looks like they're thinking about joining this game, but I really think they'll have a lot more fun if they choose something shorter and or with this personality, and you're steering people. And I love doing that, but it's so draining. So yeah, switching off, or also even just having that, even if it's just one other person, like somebody you can go to that you're going to play games with, maybe in a smaller group that okay, I know I just get to play and have fun in this situation.
yeah.
Because to have a successful group, you do need some unselfish people, basically, who are willing to make it fun for everybody. And if you don't have multiple people, like you're saying, I mean, that's not going to work. But I also am glad I have some friends that, okay, you know what, I'm just going to go to Steven's house and play War of the Ring, and I'm not going to have to teach or anything because I know I'm going to have to do all that a different time. So, and I even, we had like when we had our fall dip, we actually did some masked War of the Ring and then went back up, and now we're back to.
And I think an important distinction there is there's a gaming group that's just like you and your friends, your close friends, but there's also like a public thing that you're opening that up. So maybe you've got a meetup group or something that you created on the meetup app or something. So go ahead, David. Let me turn that over. Let you respond.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, like on my end, when we shifted almost entirely to family gaming at this point, we have too many kids in the house that are respiratorily at risk if they were to catch anything. So there is no public meetups right now for our family. So my game collection in general has heavily shifted towards those in the home. So a lot more gateway games, but then son-in-law likes the heavy stuff, so a lot of heavy stuff, and so there's no in between. And it's just I've seen a lot more trading and selling, that kind of thing. Some of the stuff that's not getting played for the last year, just to cater to those that are in the home.
Sure. Joe, you started to say something earlier.
Yeah, I don't remember what now, but it's
That's funny.
Yeah, I mean, as far as online goes, everybody who's on here is on Discord, but I've definitely found it to be the best tool, and that's what our group that plays on Tabletop Simulator is through. And I don't know what makes a tool that sticks, right? I mean, you can list out features and say this tool's the best or that tool's the best, but that doesn't always add up to what sticks. For us, it's been Discord, actually, which everybody obviously here is familiar with. Even though it has annoying things, especially when it wants to update all of a sudden and things like that. I'm sure we all know, but
yeah,
that's what's really stuck for our group.
Well, the video and streaming part of Discord used to be pretty buggy, and that's why I was hesitant to use it. I know my initial email to you guys, I was talking about using Zoom, but
yeah, you have backup.
Yeah, I did have a backup just in case, but I was like, it'd just be easier. We're going to be, Discord anyway. Be easier if we could just do the video stuff there. So
I would say too, a suggestion I might make is, again, kind of going back to the King's Dilemma example, or even just if you're trying to get more people that are newer to the hobby to play games with, whether you're kind of looking for something to do with your friends and family because you don't get to see them often, you want to get together virtually, is finding games that are more off the table. A couple like we did Mothership RPG. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's a space horror RPG that a lot of my friends enjoyed. Another game we've done is Monstrosity, which you just need a pen and paper to play the game, and then the deck of cards. But yeah, kind of looking at games that are, because unless you're doing something with people that are familiar with the hobby, you don't like the extra step of Tabletop Simulator or even Board Game Arena can be a bigger barrier than you might to. But we have had some success with some simpler games on Board Game Arena, like Ink and Gold. That was a riot playing one night.
Yeah. And Joe didn't pay me to say this, but their web tool for Forgotten Waters is excellent. And when I was kind of testing for how I was going to do Forgotten Waters, I thought about just saying, hey, you need to go buy a Tabletop Simulator or whatever. But that web tool that they've provided for the remote play is just so good. It was just like, you know what, I'm just sticking with you. I run Tabletop Simulator and share my screen so they can see the map, but then everybody else is just interacting with the game through that web tool. So kudos to them for that. But the another thought I had was kind of going back to the board game group is I think it's important to be conscious of people's level of where do they like to play. Some people like those heavy games like David was talking about. Some people like the lighter games. So if you've got a new player that comes into the group, trying to feel them out for where's your level of play, and then try to match them up with a table that's playing that level of game, you know. So anyway,
It seems like this is something David and Dustin could both speak to a lot, but I think that feeling of introducing somebody to a game who's not really a gamer and seeing them light up with like really enjoying it and really connecting with it is a really satisfying feeling, and it's feels like a skill you develop and you really have to put effort into it, which and I can imagine, playing with you know, uh, foster kids who are coming in and mixing together and things like that. I mean, that's a challenge. It makes me think I really appreciate board game cafes that are good. We have one in Little Ashland, Ohio here, called Masterminds, and that can be a helpful place for a meetup if their staff is trained to really help families and things like that find something that they're going to enjoy.
all right. Well, we have a few minutes here. I'm just going to check the channel just to see. Okay, got a question here. He'd like to hear from Max. So, Max, you're here, saying you'd like to hear more about the solo gaming concept. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Are you asking me? For them, this is for them. They mentioned it earlier. I wasn't exact. That was the first time I ever heard of the idea of solo gaming as a concept in board gaming. So if somebody could sort of explain that a little bit and what that means and what the definition is and how you do it, I don't know. That's intriguing. Not that I don't want to play with friends, but that sounded cool.
Okay, yeah, I mentioned it earlier. It is a phenomenon that I remember when I first got into games in the late 2000s. It was like a thing you could find on Board Game Geek, and you could print out some stuff basically. And I'm sure it emerged also from war gamers. Back in the day, a lot of war games are only ever seemingly played solo, but yeah, I mean, basically, it's just what it sounds like. It's just you put all the pieces out and you roll the dice and you follow the rules. But it has exploded in popularity. So there's tons of resources and tons of big name games that come out now have very sophisticated solo rules, and they might just be adjusted rules. Like in my games, Raxon and Forgotten Waters, you're just kind of adjusting for the fact that there's one player. Sometimes games are well suited to just play what's called multi-handed. So my coworker Jerry's games, his biggest game is Mice and Mystics and Stuffed Fables, and it's like fantasy dungeon crawls, but it's easy to control more than one character. But then there's other games. Gloomhaven, like was mentioned earlier, is the number one game on Board Game Geek now, and I would bet that probably a good third. I mean, I'm totally speculating. Who knows? But probably a third of the games of Gloomhaven, or more, maybe half ever played, have probably been played solo. And it's just like opening. That game is, it's just like opening up, Elder Scrolls and something in the Elder Scrolls series, and you just go and you do it, and you beat some baddies, but instead of a solo video game, it's with a bunch of cardboard on the table, right? And it's not something I'm actually personally have spent hundreds of hours on, like some people, and to be an expert in, but some people eat it up. And I know there was a lot of people who were doubters a long time ago that are now on board and understand the value now. So
Yeah, I've done it a couple times. I played some solo. Like Clank has an assist. Gloomhaven is one I've done solo, and it's kind of like this meditative feeling a little bit. I feel like I kind of get into that flow state where I'm kind of lost in the.
Yeah, thanks. That idea of it being sort of that, especially in a very story-driven bit of content, that seems like a fascinating opportunity. the way you described it, to something like an Elder Scrolls Skyrim, which is, again, a lot of it you're playing for the story. The kind of deep story behind a board game, why not have an opportunity to just go through it and experience the story at your own pace and how you want. I'll throw another one in, Albus, that I just saw come up. Sorry, we've got questions flowing in from like 3 different places. We've got them in Twitch. Okay. We've got them in 2 different channels in Discord. Marcus just threw one out here. We definitely want to get this one done. Board gaming with education. Is there a site that people could look up? A lot of us have kids. I think that'd be really exciting for people.
Yeah, you can go to just boardgamewitheducation.com. Something I usually do and I haven't set up yet, but maybe I'll do this after. Get off is a 10% off coupon for the first time. You go to the website, AIECon. So that would.
Oh, sweet.
And if you have any questions, definitely you can reach out to me to podcast at Board Game with Education. But yeah, we're very new, so we're really excited to hear from anyone that checks us out and any suggestions.
Very good to know. Thank you. And here I'll even show the site here if I found it. Yeah, this is excellent. As I said, we've got our community is very family focused. We all have kids. We have kids that weren't even born when the community started, and now they're often starting guilds of their own. So this is this kind of thing, especially for with school age kids, I think would be really cool to explore.
Awesome, thank you.
One question that came through was, how do you know or decide, I guess, how complex or difficult the game needs to be?
You talking about game design?
Yes.
You think?
Yeah.
I think you have to set goals for yourself when you're kind of working on a game, and that includes kind of who it's for. So like I said, designing games is part of my job. We have to pay salaries, so I want to be able to reach a wide audience. So I try to make my games as playable as possible, but you don't have to do that, And so I try to cut out bloat anywhere I can, for the sake of making it easy to play and easy to learn. But that's not everybody's goal, And if you're trying to make a simulation, if you're trying to make for a specific community, there's a different set of tastes, and even, and if you're trying to make for an RPG group, right? They have different. I'm not a big RPG person, and I like to me, the same people that I play board games with who play RPGs, they have like no attention span to just. And this is not a stereotype, just these specific people. They have no attention span sometimes, maybe for rules learning, right? And but then if I try to play an RPG with them, I don't have any attention span for, going through town and exploring all of the dialogue and stuff. So it's like people have different tolerances and tastes. So it really depends on your goal for the audience. But I will say personally, I've never regretted making something simpler. And if you try to make a prototype, usually it comes out way more complicated than it was in your head. I don't know if you agree with that, David.
All right. Did you want to address that at all, David? How you decide how complex or whatever?
Yeah, sure. I like the old KISS acronym. Keep it simple. I usually, like you mentioned, Joe, have some goals in mind. Usually when I'm designing, I start with mechanics first. Like I thought of a mechanic, I want to make a game around that rather than theme first, like some people might prefer. But definitely, I'll start with that one mechanic, and then I'll toss a bunch of stuff on, and I'll go, okay, you know what? This is about 50% more than what I want it to be when it's done. There's just too much, and start trimming back. And then I'll add more and trim back. And get it in front of people so I can see where, because now at this point I've seen it too much. I don't know what's bloat anymore. And getting feedback from the playtesters is just so critical. And getting their opinion of what is still bloat. Maybe that deck of cards that I still have lingering could be replaced by a couple dice and get the same overall effect without losing much. So definitely trimming, like you said, is if it doesn't hinder the gameplay or the fun that you get to have out of it, then by all means, simpler is better.
All right. I think we've got time for one more question. So, what are some good starter games that are good to get a gaming group off the ground? Dustin, you want to start us out?
Sure. I guess in my experience, I want to say party games have kind of been a good anchor, I suppose, something to kind of lean into because most or more often than not, people enjoy them and they're laughing and they're having a good time, and that kind of reels them in to the hobby. Yeah, because I don't know, I maybe someone has different experiences, but it would be really tough for me to throw a game down, even that's like Wingspan, Catan, that aren't like super complex, but uh, with someone that's not familiar with the modern hobby at all, like Catan is, that's an hour and a half investment. You gotta have to really know they're willing to sit down for that. Otherwise, most party games are very quick. Uh, Maybe the first time you get together with a group, you do a party game or a couple different party games. Next time you kind of step it up and do like a 30, 45-minute game and kind of keep keep going. I know that's how I got into the hobby, again, back into the hobby from my adult.
All right.
Yeah, and it's not that. The thing is, there is a lot of people who would love to jump in, who would have a blast jumping into a real thematic, complex game. The problem is you don't know who. So that's why I would agree with your advice that, I never fail with the game Skull. I definitely recommend it. It's like the simplest imaginable. It's just basically bluffing condensed down to its atomic level of the just pure, just the simplest possible bluffing game, and it's never failed. And yeah, I think you do that, and Codenames is another one that never fails for me, but a word game that you can get at Target, and I think that I agree that you start light, just because after a couple games of that, like, who wants to play this thing now? And half the group's gonna be like, oh yeah, I've had enough, and then half the groups is gonna be ready, and those people, yeah, and those people, you might have been able to pull out, something ridiculous that I have got back on the shelf in the first place. But yeah, like Dustin is saying, you don't want to accidentally get someone into something like that if they're not going to have fun. So
Well, let's see. I'm just going to conclude here. Again, I really appreciate you guys participating in the panel. I think this has been an excellent time. So, just kind of as a closing, just tell everybody kind of what projects you've got going on and how could they get in touch with you after this. David, why don't you start us out?
Thanks. Yeah, I've got actually a few. Probably my longest running one is Rubber Banditos, which is basically a shooting gallery of the game. Uses rubber bands to fire at an old western city that we've kind of constructed. So we kind of construct, place some bandits in the buildings, shoot at them, try to get your opponent's bandits. And that's just been a blast to play in cons. Unfortunately, it seems publishers don't like shooting as a general theme, so I'm having a hard time getting that one on the market. Just in Time is a real-time cooperative time travel abstract. A lot of keywords there. And it's definitely a brain melty, puzzly experience. But it's just amazing when I go to a con and someone, like, it clicks for them and they're like, oh, I get it. And it's just really cool to see it come across their face and then play the game. I got a little roll and write called Protoplants that features a little 2x2 Rubik's Cube as the main little star of the solar system. That's kind of a neat little puzzle. And then the latest one is Boteoshi, which it's based on the Japanese sport of pole toppling. It's just a little micro dexterity game, talking 6 crocodile discs, a ramp, and a couple little poles. And it's just a little dexterity game. It's fun to play, and it's had a lot of good reviews so far. I'll make sure to post a link in the Discord podcast and panels chat with those, and people can reach me here or on BGG I'd be happy to follow up with any additional questions after this.
Great. All right, Dustin, how about you?
Yeah, first, thank you again, AIECon and Joe and David. This was great. Like I said, I love talking about board games. So, just boardgamewitheducation.com. There's our newsletter, which is about the second thing on the main page. That is where you'll hear everything pretty much with us. We email about once a week on Tuesdays. And then if you want to reach me directly, you can reach out podcast at boardgamewitheducation.com. And again, I'm going to add a coupon code AIECon for 10% off for anyone that wants to pick something up. And again, if you have any questions, please, or you have any suggestions, please let me know. We're still trying to figure this out and grow.
Great. Yeah. All right, Joe.
Yeah. So you're welcome to reach out to me on Twitter. I'm Joe Pinion, JoePinion, or actually same username on Board Game Geek. That's a good thought. I'm pretty active there, and current projects in the next couple months at Plaid Hat. We got a couple things happening. We will have our first DLC for Forgotten Waters. So a new scenario and also a bunch of other entries that can show up in anything. So check out Forgotten Waters, and we'll have a really exciting scenario coming out for that. And then Summoner Wars, which was I was a super fan of back in the day, and that's how I got involved with Plaid Hat Games and started freelancing for them, and became friends with everybody there in the first place. We've got the second edition will be sort of officially rolled out in the next couple months. So, Summoner Wars used to also, it's a 2-player battle game. It had an app on the App Store. We're going to have something digital for it. That'll be a little different. And it is, just keep an eye out for that, because it's no information yet, but it's been a blast this year. One of my all-time favorite games, getting to work on it every day over this past year, getting it ready. So look out for that from Plaid Hat.
Well, thanks again, y'all. Y'all are welcome to hang out in the channel. I don't know if you'd be willing to do that, but people may want to have some more follow-up questions. But we're at the end of a little bit over, actually, our official time. So I appreciate it, and thank you for everyone coming to participate. I apologize if I didn't get to your question. We did have a few more questions, but we just didn't have enough time. So. And you panelists, feel free to post your information in the podcast and panels channel if you want to post your websites or whatever. Feel free to plug there. So, thanks again, y'all.
Yeah, this is Max on behalf of the leadership of AIE. Really appreciate the time you guys took. This was really fun for us and kind of exciting. It's you guys are like serious business here, and coming to come talk to us for a panel was something we really all appreciated in a big way. We've had a solid crew, 10 to 15 online, another 10 or so in the channel here, and a bunch of people that are waiting for the video to go up on YouTube. They're going to want to go through this. So this is going to get a little bit of play within our community, and then we're going to certainly put it out there for all of our friends and family and get everyone into board gaming. So really, really appreciate it. All right, I'm going to close down the stream now. We'll keep the party going here in the channel, and just so everybody knows, we've got more board gaming sessions all weekend. Check in with Albus. There's still signups going on. I think we've got 1 or 2 slots for Forgotten Waters this afternoon. So jump in there, and we'll be streaming that, and you don't have to wear a costume like Gusty did yesterday, which was amazing. You don't have to sing sea shanties like we all are these days, but you can certainly get in there and play. It's a good time.